In this recording, I'm going to show you how you can reference virtually CAD files from any application in the ShipConstructor environment. As well, I'm going to show how you can have a good class management strategy on dealing with ShipConstructor entities, as well as CAD files that are generated from other systems. So the use case that I'll be going through in this video is the use case where we'll say ShipConstructor is the main prime, going to be doing majority of the structure as well as majority of the outfitting. However, there is some outfitting that I have subcontract out to some partners that use different tools, which I end up letting them use whatever tools they would like. From that, they are to pass me step files as reference files every week, so that way my team can reference them to ensure they're doing their job, and as well as to validate our design, and as well as to do constant integration clash detection. So as in the blog post, the very first thing is to create a folder, in essence, in the ShipConstructor project. Here I just call it the reference CAD. The only real reason there is that it gives one location where we manage these files from the ShipConstructor as well as for the clash detection. So we don't have files all over the network and so forth. So it keeps it a little bit more clean and concise, as well as we overwrite these files, the system will automatically update the references in the clash as well as in ShipConstructor. So in my discussion in the blog, I said that the best practice is to use Navisworks batch to create Navisworks files for all the reference CAD systems. And again, here I just have step files, but it could be CATIA files, SolidWorks, even just native AutoCAD files. But instead of using the AutoCAD batch, what I'll be doing, as just to simplify this video, is selecting all the files, again, any format you have, and just select it in any Navisworks window. It doesn't have to be a current file. This one's just a brand new one. And in essence, what this does is it starts creating a NWC file or a Navisworks cache file for each of these files. And what that allows us is that now will allow us to, in the ShipConstructor environment, to reference that graphically and visually in ShipConstructor so that we can actually use it within our environment. So it's completed, and what will happen is when you select them all into one Navisworks file, it will create one reference file that contains everything. So again, this is everything that has come from my subcontractors or partners or what have you, suppliers that I want to reference within ShipConstructor. So I don't really need to save this file, because all I was really using this Navisworks for was for it to generate these NWC files. So what I did is I selected these step files, put them into Navisworks, and it automatically created these NWC files, which I will be using to reference it. So after that, I'm pretty much ready to reference any of these files within ShipConstructor. Again, if you use Navisworks batch, you can automate that so users don't have to do it, and if it's all in one location, it just becomes relatively easy to manage. So this is my ShipConstructor environment. So as you can see, I have all my 3D parts and all my information. I can modify my parts if I see fit. And I have only one plane here, but I can have as much as I want. So first thing to do is obviously to make sure you're in the world coordinate system. And the only reason is, as you reference all these files, you have to make sure that they all line up properly, and using the world coordinate system is usually the easiest way to do that. So from there, I want to do call my coordination model attach, which I have a list of my NWC files that I generated. So you just pretty much have to select one. So select the water supply. I did, for sake of demonstration, have my step files on a different dimension or precision, so it's on centimeters instead of millimeters, so that's why I have to scale it. But just kind of show you that you have to in some cases depending on how you get your files. However, if it's mostly native files like a Viva file or SolidWorks or a JT file which has unit measurements included, you don't really usually have to do the scaling. So that's pretty much it. So I got my system in my ShipConstructor environment. As you can kind of see, it's kind of hard to see if it's actually a ShipConstructor item or if it's actually referenced. You can actually change some styles or some visualization on the reference model. So for example, you can change the fading, which makes it a little darker or lighter, as well as you can change the transparency. So just, the idea there is sometimes you want to make sure those look slightly different so it doesn't look like they're native entities. So if we actually even add more, there is no limitation on what we want to include. So the same scaling, and pretty much there we go. So in essence, I have demonstrated before, you can have a whole ship as reference because they're relatively lightweight. They're not as doesn't have as much information obviously as the native ShipConstructor items. So therefore, having an entire ship in a ShipConstructor environment as reference is easily to do. Probably not very useful, but still it is doable. So the next phase really is managing all those files. So that's when you want to get into ShipConstructor, but you still sometimes want to do clash detection or even just see the whole project in one visualization solution. So even though technically in ShipConstructor it is supported, but using Navisworks gives it a little bit easier and a lightweight view of how to use to see all the information combined. So in essence, this is a ShipConstructor model that was created. Again, it's still being worked in progress, as the use case that we're doing is that there's still some work happen on locally as well as from the subcontractors. And now you want to start referencing and seeing all the information combined. So before I do that, what I'll do is I'm going to change the color here as well as the transparency, just so that we can more easily see the items that are coming in. So that's ShipConstructor items, and now let's append the files that are coming from our subcontractors. So it's very key to append the native files, so in this case the step, or again if it could be the Viva, the CATIA, JT, and so forth, rather than the NWC file. And the main reason is that as we get updated versions from our subcontractors, that we can just replace these files and everything will update. Navisworks, by refreshing, which I'll show, will automatically recreate the NWC file, which could be referenced within ShipConstructor. So there's very little management in that case. So what we'll do is we'll append all these step files, and what it's doing here is just adding them to the ShipConstructor or to the Navisworks environment. See, it added the colored items are the systems that come from the step files. So you can see, they're still they're not completed, but they're work in progress. So at least gives me a view of what's being worked on, ensuring that it's following the standards and criteria that I've given to my subcontractor or my partners. The interesting thing too is that when you start looking at this, you can actually still reference ShipConstructor items. So say for example, that's a part you want to see how everything is going around there, that you can right click and click switch back. So open ShipConstructor, what you can see is it actually selected the ShipConstructor part and did it in the exact same view that is in the Navisworks. So you can use the Navisworks file for coordination and collaboration, and then if you need to get back to the ShipConstructor to make any changes, you can just right click and go to that drawing, which really comes useful with clash detection, which I'll show shortly. The other thing that I wanted to show is that it is very common in that there'll be new files that will come from your subcontractors, and I kind of want to show you how it gets updated. So I'm going to simulate that by saying these are a completed version of these files, and say we just paste them in. That's all that has to happen. You can replace the files, and in essence, next time I open up Navisworks, it would automatically update. But since I'm in Navisworks, I have to click the refresh. And just before I do so, you might want to just take a look that most of the work is done on the app side. There's not much on the forward side. And if I just click refresh here, what it's going to do is going to see that those files have changed and reload them into the current drawing. So you can see the updated parts with just a simple refresh, and I get a lot more information. And as the files get updated, this Navisworks file or view will just keep on getting automatically updated. So the last thing I want to show is clash detection. So it is common when you have multiple companies working on the same project that you really need to have a good clash detection strategy. So in essence here, when I've merged everything in Navisworks, it's just not to view it. I can do clashes. So I'll click clashes. Here I'll just delete the one I did before and start a new one. So in essence, what I'll do is I'll do a clash between all the ShipConstructor entities or parts against all of the items that all the step files here. So I'll run test, and it's identified all the clashes. So you kind of go down, you see all the clashes that have been happening. And if you want to see how or where it's located in the ship, you can do that as well. So if we want to deal with this clash, what we could do is that you can again just select that part, right click and go switch back, open up the ShipConstructor drawing. It'll change the view, exactly the view that you had with your Navisworks, and select the part. So if we want to actually do the model coordination and get the system in there to see the clash or the penetration that should be created, we'll be able to do that. So I hope this kind of shows how you can get data from your subcontractors and your partners and kind of merge it all together and reference it in the ShipConstructor environment, as well as handle an effective clash strategy.